B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Natzliach. Chapter 1, Mishnah 1. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai u'msara liYehoshua. V'Yehoshua lizkenim, u'zkenim lenevi'im, u'nevi'im מסרוה לאנשי כנסת הגדולה. הם אמרו 3 דברים, הווה מתונים בדים, והעמידו תלמידים הרבה, ועשו סייג לתורה. Moses received the Torah from Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua. Joshua transmitted it to the elders to the prophets, and the prophets transmitted it to the men of the great assembly. They said 3 things: be deliberate in rendering judgment, raise up many disciples, and make a fence for the Torah. So on the section of Moses received the Torah from Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua, Rabbi Alter of Teplik says, what does this account of the line of transmission have to do with Pirkei Avot, which deals with ethical instruction and self-improvement? On the most practical level, it teaches that we must heed the true tzaddikim in every generation. As the Torah states, you shall not deviate from what they tell you to the right or to the left. For the tzaddikim constitute our link to Moses, the master of all prophets, and hence to the divine revelation experienced by the Israelites at Mount Sinai. Attachment to tzaddikim is the foundation of spiritual growth. When viewed in this light, how fitting that Pirkei Avot begins with this principle. In other words, it's very important to follow people that have found the light and receive the light that they found. Why recreate the wheel when it's already been created? Rav Nassan comments, it is customary to study Pirkei Avot during the days of the counting of the Omer, in preparation for the festival of Shavuot. We begin the declaration that Moses received the Torah from Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua, who passed it onward from generation to generation. This teaches us that the tikkun of our individual and personal connection to the Torah primarily depends on true tzaddikim of each generation, all of whom received the Torah from Moses. Now we've spoken and we will speak about what a tzaddik is, but in this particular case it would be somebody that has found the light, that has dedicated their lives to following and pursuing and learning and then transmitting said light. Moses corresponds to the upper point of the Hebrew letter Aleph, which represents the highest perception of godliness. Elaborating on this, the Zohar declares, there's an extension of the soul of Moses from one generation to the next. The meaning of this is made clear in the verse, your righteousness is like the mighty mountains, your judgments are like the vast depths. Man and beast you save, O God. Very quickly here it's saying that the meaning of this is clear. Let's continue. In the straightforward meaning, this verse refers to God. Nevertheless, your righteousness is like the mighty mountains can also refer to the tzaddik who has reached the highest spiritual plane. His righteousness has become elevated as high as the mighty mountains to the upper point of the Aleph. Conversely, your judgments are like the vast depth. Depths can allude to those on the lowest levels, at the bottom point of the Aleph. Only the unification of these two creates the complete Aleph and the complete man. Thus, the tzaddik can attain wholeness and perfection only when he illuminates those on the lowest levels, thereby fulfilling the conclusion of the verse, man and beast you save, O God. The tzaddik's compassion must extend even to those who are guilty of such spiritual damage that they deserve to be cast down into the abyss, and even to those on the level of a beast. When the tzaddik illuminates them and binds them to himself at the upper point of the Aleph, God's presence is illuminated in the lower point of the Aleph as well. So here what he's saying is one of the powers of a tzaddik. What makes him a tzaddik is that he doesn't feel presumptuous about what he knows. He doesn't look at people and see what they're not. But on the contrary, he sees that just like there needs to be a top, there also needs to be a bottom, and they're both necessary to complete a whole. So the true tzaddik sees the bottom as an integral part of the whole, and therefore he never judges the bottom for being less than the top, but rather sees the benefit, the light, and the truth in the bottom rung, and therefore illuminates it through the light that he has in the top. And the bottom rung illuminates the light on the top because it's a vessel for it to receive. So you see that the true tzaddik is connected to everybody, and that's the way that he gets his full light and gets his light to kind of go in this circular motion throughout the whole kind of spectrum of people. We should always strive to learn Torah, says Rav Nassan, together with others, and also dedicate time to learning alone. Both are necessary, For it is certain that our acceptance of the Torah involves joining together with kindred souls and thus connecting to the collective soul of Israel. Indeed, this is the idea behind the public Torah reading in the synagogue. Although it may be fairly easy to attend synagogue services, still, we must pray to be worthy of bonding with the collective soul of Israel through which the true spirit of prophecy can manifest, as it did at Mount Sinai when the Torah was given. Today, only true Tzadikim of the generation have the power to draw down the spirit of prophecy through the gathering of the souls of Israel. Kind of apropos for our times, right? We see how strong we are as a people and how strong our leaders and our soldiers and just the nation becomes when we all put our differences aside and come together as one. We learn from this how important it is to stand together in awe when the Torah is being read in the synagogue, as if we were standing at the Mount Sinai. In this way, we connect with the level that the Jewish people reached then, when Israel encamped at the foot of the mountain as one man with one heart. So here it's saying that specifically during the Torah reading, you can tap into that same power and energy, but it's only through a community. It's when you're standing as one as a community that you can reach that high level of prophecy, which is basically when all of us stand in our strengths and we stand together, then we get the power to reveal that which was before unrevealed to us. For in truth, all of our souls were there. As Moses himself attests, I am making it, this oath, with those who are standing here with us today before God, and with those who are not here with us today. This implies that all Jewish souls, including those of all future generations, were present at Mount Sinai and received the Torah through Moses. I knew I've seen you before. You were at Mount Sinai, right? You were like the 15th row from the back. Yeah, I remember you. The Torah continues to flow to us through the Tzadikim. As the Mishnah states, Moses received the Torah from Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua. Joshua transmitted it to the elders to the prophets, and so on until present day. So you see, when it was difficult to attain the knowledge of the Torah, when it was difficult for us to have access to the Torah, well, it was sent to those that were able to transmit it. Today, those that transmit it are extremely necessary because they put it into the language that we can understand. But also we have the advantage that the knowledge is there for us to seek and for us to get out. In every generation, the continuity of Torah transmission is maintained by the establishment of holy academies, yeshivot, whose studies gather around tzaddikim, the true masters of Torah, and in this way bind their souls in unity. This is how the Torah is passed from one generation to the next. Whenever we attend a Torah reading in the synagogue, we should contemplate that our souls are bound with the souls of all Israel through true tzaddikim of the generation, for they are the ones who strive to bring everyone together so that the Torah will never be lost. Now, nowadays, we can get together in ways, we can listen to Torah, and we can hear it. That doesn't necessarily mean going to the synagogue. Now, it's important, don't get me wrong, to go to the synagogue, but that time where we're united and when we're connecting to that same energy, that brings us that same energy that we had when there was prophecy and higher understanding and higher level of connection to Hashem. In the digest of commentaries, it says Moses received the Torah from Sinai. This means the entire Torah, both the written and the oral, which Moses received from God, who revealed himself at Mount Sinai. And the prophets, so Moses got it directly from God, and the prophets transmitted it to the men of the Great Assembly, numbering 120 prophets and sages. The men of the Great Assembly, Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, were appointed by Ezra the scribe in the 4th century, after he led the Babylonian exiles back to the land of Israel. Over a period of some 200 years, the member of this tribunal redacted the final books of the prophets, composed numerous blessings and prayers, and instituted various decrees at the beginning of the Second Temple era. In many ways, the order of everyday religious life for the observant Jew, even today, is the product of Ezra and the men of the Great Assembly. We're talking about 4th century BCE, dating back to when we, again, got back to the land of Israel. Now, there's a section that says Proof of God, Rav Nassan. Referring to the laws of the Torah, the wise son of Pesach Haggadah asks, what are these testimonies? Indeed, the term testimony is used to refer to the Torah. For example, and you shall place the tablets of testimony in the ark. This is because the Torah itself is a compelling testimony to the existence of God. The written Torah and the oral law, the books of the prophets and the writings, the Talmud and the Midrashim, the Zohar, and the writings of the Ari and the true tzaddikim of our generation, all attest that God is one, and his name is one. Who could contend that the human mind was able to invent this vast and harmonious Torah that God has revealed to us? What human could devise all this? Who could bring forth all these wonders but God? Moses received the Torah directly from God. Then Moses transmitted whatever he could to Joshua. This transmission is continued unbroken to the present day. Similarly, all the wondrous teachings of the great Tzadikim, the masters of spiritual ascent, all affirm, attest, and reveal God's existence to all seekers of truth. This touches on a point that I've always thought was very interesting. Many other theories, many other philosophies throughout the history, throughout the times have come and have gone. Or they've come and they've shifted and they've changed or evolved into something else. But Judaism is one of the only theories or practices, not the only, one of the only, that has gone unchanged since it was received. And, well, you would think that if something became outdated, well, they would change it. The fact that it hasn't been changed, again, attests to the proof that that's not human. Because humankind changes, grows, and evolves. Yet the Torah has remained unchanged. Next section. Be deliberate in rendering judgment. Raise up many disciples, and make a fence for the Torah. Rabbi Nachman. The true Tzadik seeks to install wisdom and fear of heaven in his disciples. To this end, he must speak to each befittingly. To those who are spiritually accomplished, he must demonstrate that they have yet to know anything of God. To those who are sunk in the depths of despair, he must reveal that God's radiance is everywhere, hidden within all things. This will awaken those who despair from their spiritual sleep and cause them to return to God. By being discriminating with his various disciples, the Tzadik fulfills the mandate to be deliberate and rendering judgment. This reminds me of a story when I first started keeping Torah. I was in a rut. It was one of those really, really tough kind of ruts of I wasn't sure what I was doing, if I had made the right choice. And I spoke with my rabbi, Rav Elisha, God should bless him and give him a long life. And he said to me, listen, Eli, when you're down, when you're not feeling good about yourself, look back. Look at what you've accomplished in such a short amount of time. Look at where you were and look at now where you are. But when you want to feel motivated, he said to me, when you want to feel like you've got to move forward in life and you need some drive, look at everything that you have yet to achieve. In other words, your perspective should be used in order to motivate you to the place that you need to be. Be deliberate before you render judgment of how to speak. Because he relates to each individual's unique nature and circumstances, the Tzadik is sought after for instruction and comes to raise up many disciples. Moreover, by using his judgment to withhold lofty insights that are beyond his disciples' grasp, he makes a fence for the Torah. Therefore, the Mishnah states, a fence for wisdom is silence. So a few things here again. Another understanding of what is a tzaddik. Tzaddik is always something that before at least was so out, it was out of grasp, out of range. But here he's saying that anybody that brings you closer to Hashem, anybody that causes you to take one step closer, that's a tzaddik. So I think all of us in one way or another at some point have given light to somebody else. We've all tapped into that light of being a tzaddik. But he also says that you have to know when to be quiet. He says the fence for wisdom is silence. You don't always have to prove your point. You don't always have to convince. Sometimes it's just best to say, this isn't the right timing to say that right thing. In the Digest of Commentaries, it says, be deliberate in rendering judgment. That is, do not rush to pass a verdict or to declare a legal ruling. How often do we somebody tells us something, we immediately say, no, that person's wrong, it's their fault. And then we start asking questions and we realize, oh wait, oops, had I have known that, I might have reacted differently. This subject, this opening thing that the ethics of our fathers are teaching us is chill, slow down, get over that instinct to be really quick to render your judgment and get the facts, figure it out. It's not always so cut and dry. So take a few moments, ask some questions, and then you can see if there's a judgment that can be delivered. Raise up many disciples. Unlike Ramban Gamliel, who said one who's inside, the state of spiritual development, does not match his outside, his behavior, may not enter the academy. And unlike the school of Shammai, which held that a rabbi should teach only those who are wise, humble, and of good parentage, we should heed the school of Hillel, which asserted, teach every man. For many sinners of Israel were drawn to the study of Torah, and righteous, pious, worthy men emerged from them. There's two ways to look at things. There's the school of Beit Shammai, which is like really, really strict, and it's like elitist. And there's a place for it. But then there's a school of Beit Hillel, which is just, hey, everybody that's thirsty, come drink water. The Torah is for everybody. And everybody has to raise disciples. So if I know the letter Aleph, let me teach the letter Aleph. And that's how we spread the light. It doesn't matter how big or how small or how powerful or how deep. As long as we're raising many disciples, as long as we're spreading every light that we have, then we're fulfilling the first thing said in the ethics of our fathers. But what about the vessel? Well, a worthy vessel. When Rav Nassan, already an accomplished scholar, first came to Rabbi Nachman, he realized he could receive tremendous spiritual illumination from him. To be able to receive such light, however, he would have to become a fit vessel. Rav Nassan later stated, when I became attached to the Rebbe, I set aside my mind completely, as if I had no intellect of my own. When I heard something from the Rebbe, I received a bit of intellect. When I heard another, I gained a bit more. Because of this ability to set aside all previous knowledge in order to internalize the Rebbe's teaching, Reb Nassan was uniquely qualified to transmit the Rebbe's wisdom to the world. Here's a really, really cool concept. If you found your Tzadik, if you found that person, it's not saying don't think and use your own mind, but when you're receiving from that, blank your mind, be a sponge, receive it. Then you integrate it. Referring it to different processes in life. At the end of yoga, one of the most important parts of a yoga practice is savasana, when you rest and you let your entire body just completely go in this state of relaxation to absorb all of the work that was done. While you're doing the yoga, the only thing you're focusing on is the yoga and the breathing. But in that time of relaxation and integration, that's when the body absorbs all of the work that was done. And this is, I think, what he's hinting at here, is that a worthy vessel is one that knows that when it's time to receive, you put yourself aside and you receive. When it's time to integrate, then you can kind of fit in yourself that which was received. But if you're busy integrating while you're receiving, then what you're receiving has been impurified by your own thoughts. Not that your thoughts are impure, but first receive the pure thought, and then transmit whatever it is that you've integrated from that thought. And that's something that we call holding space. It's something that when you're speaking with somebody as well, a normal person, don't wait your turn to speak. Don't try to get your information out there. First receive, integrate, process, then share. Moving on. Rav Nassan continues and says we must make an effort to judge everyone in a positive light. This complements another saying of our sages, do not judge your friend until you've reached his place. It's in Avot 4, so we'll go deeper on that later. That is, until you stand in his shoes. If you notice an unworthy character trait in a friend or a student, be extremely cautious about judging him. Be loath to deem anyone entirely guilty, or to reject him or hate him because of a perceived flaw. Rather, judge all people favorably, seeking their good points. How hard is that, right? How hard is it to, when somebody does something, or even if you hear something about somebody, then you render this judgment, and no matter what, that judgment is always there. Saying, don't. Just judge them favorably, and let that favorable judgment be what's sitting with you in your heart. You see, by judging others favorably, that is, by being deliberate in rendering judgment, you'll be at peace with everyone. Then you'll be able to fulfill the sage's second instruction, to rise up many disciples. Indeed, the latter duty depends on the former. It's interesting because when you don't have any negative judgments on others, basically you're increasing the peace that you have in yourself, because somebody else doesn't really suffer when you have a negative judgment on them unless you're in a position to actually do something about it, but you do. Every time you look at them, you've got to deal with this feeling, and you've got to deal with this negativity that's within you because of the negativity that you perceive in the other person. But if you take a moment and you see, okay, I see negativity, what else do I see? And then you focus on the other positive things that you see, then you yourself are at peace, because what stays within you is that feeling of positivity that you saw in someone else. And thus you wake up that positivity that you see in yourself, and not, chas v'shalom, the opposite. The Talmud illustrates this in its account of the different leadership styles of Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Gamliel was a strict and exacting master who would not accept any student whose inside state of spiritual development does not match his outside behavior. By contrast, Rabbi Elazar welcomed every student, no matter his merits. When Rabbi Gamliel was deposed as head of the Talmudic Academy, and Rabbi Elazar instated in his place, it was announced, anyone who wishes to study may enter. So many new students arrived that hundreds of benches had to be added to the house of study. So you see, there are different schools. I can say personally, had I been judged by my outside behavior when I first arrived to start studying, and even today sometimes, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have been able to open the first book. So thank God that we learned and that we've instilled that which Rabbi Elazar taught, which was teach everyone. And today with those social media, if you've got something to teach, I'm going for it. Teach anyone. Rav Nassan continues regarding the final redemption, and Isaiah prophesied, "For you will not depart the exile in haste, or hurry as you walk. For the Lord shall go before you, and the God of Israel will gather you in." Haste is the opposite of deliberateness. The consciousness of God that will characterize the final redemption will be of a most wondrous and deliberate nature, exemplifying the teaching, be deliberate in rendering judgment. This is a little bit interesting to read in our times right now. A teacher requires much wisdom and forethought to illuminate those who occupy a high spiritual rung with even greater and more expanding perceptions of God's awesome transcendence. He must warn these students not to be complacent, for as high as the angels are, they never tire of asking, where is the place of His glory? Likewise, a teacher needs the same deliberation in order to be able to convey the reality of God's immanence and closeness to those who occupy a lower spiritual rung. Like the holy angels, they too must realize the entire world is full of His glory. Never think that you know it all. Never think that you got there. You get there, we get there, when we're 6 feet under. The rest of our lives, we've got to grow. We got to keep doing it. And not only keep doing it, but be excited about it and jump up and say, where are you, Hashem? Because that wakes up our spirit. It wakes up our soul. It wakes up that inner fire, that search. It's what keeps us alive. When you're done searching, well, you're kind of running on the inertia of the search that you've been doing. So this is the meaning, for the Lord shall go before you. These words are directed to those who have attained a high spiritual level. They must know that they have not reached their final destination. For true understanding of God is always far beyond anything we can imagine. On the other hand, those who have fallen behind must never despair. For the God of Israel will surely gather you in. Again, on the other hand, those who have fallen behind, those who have been taken, must never despair, for the God of Israel will surely gather you in. God is with them in all their trials and tribulations, and enfolds them in His mercies. This then is the context for the sage's statement: be deliberate in rendering judgment, raise up many disciples, and make a fence for the Torah. To attain these sublime insights, to enlighten others as well, we must be deliberate and discerning. For there are times when we may need to hear how much more we have to grow to advance spiritually, while at other times we may need to help to appreciate how much we have achieved already. This is the meaning of making a fence. As the Mishna states, a fence for wisdom is silence. At times, After due deliberation, wisdom dictates that it is better to not say anything at all. Deliberateness is key to advancing safely from one level to the next on our narrow path, and it is an essential quality to help others advance as well. Better not to say anything at all. I think that really touches a nerve with me. When we don't know, when we don't understand, when our wisdom doesn't quite grasp the divine wisdom, be quiet. Shh. Listen. Learn. Be deliberate. Sometimes you have to wait to collect evidence. We're in a situation, we're in a journey, in a part of history that we're still in it. Let's be deliberate. Let's see. I don't know, the consciousness of God that will characterize the final redemption will be of the most wondrous and deliberate nature. Let's be curious. Let's continue. Make a fence for the Torah. This is a directive to establish rabbinical safeguards against violating Torah prohibitions. In addition, we may infer from this that a rabbi should not burden his audience, especially when explaining the words of the Torah. Instead, he should keep in mind the time allotted him and the limits of his abilities and address his listeners in a manner they will understand. So I want to talk about safeguards and Torah prohibition and say it in like a little bit of an analogy or an example. One of the rules that they teach, for example, and if somebody's an alcoholic and he's in Alcoholics Anonymous and is trying to cure himself from that addiction, it's don't go into the bar. Making a fence for the Torah is saying, I know I'm not allowed to drink, so I'm not going to go to the bar and sit at the bar and order a soda, because that's too much enticement. My fence right now needs to be, I can't go into a bar. And the fence for the Torah is going to be different for everybody at different stages of their lives. When you feel like you're weak somewhere, make a fence. Don't put yourself into a situation that might lead to a situation that you might put in a situation that you don't want to. Certain situations are so sensitive that you've got to make a lot of fences. One of those fences, for example, is the law of yichud, of being alone, secluded with a member of the opposite sex. You see, that nothing's going to happen. I know we're not. But you see, once you're in that seclusion, then you go into this whole area of, well, maybe. And you see, the fence gets you out of that maybe. Again, beautiful teaching. And the last couple of sections for today's sharing of chapter 1, Mishna 1 of Pirkei Avot, raise up many disciples. The true Tzadik must leave a legacy of wisdom for all future generations, since this brings him a spiritual wholeness after death. Although a Tzadik may reach the loftiest heights in the spiritual world, he does not achieve perfection by virtue of this ascent alone. Rather, even after he departs this world, he must continue to illuminate others down here, below, through descendants or disciples who receive and transmit his holy wisdom, ensuring that his wisdom continues to illuminate the world from generation to generation forever. I think that's beautiful, right? If you teach somebody something, and then they teach it to somebody, then you transcend. And that means that you live on forever, and the light that you were able to bring down can live on forever. And the thing is that we have no clue how much one little light can spread. So don't be embarrassed to spread your light. Don't think that you have to be this definition of tzaddik that like is untouchable to do what a tzaddik does, which is learn and spread light. Make a fence for the Torah. Rav Nassim teaches by increasing the number of people who learn Torah, one also constructs a fence around the Torah, for this ensures that the Torah will not be forgotten. Each generation of students will teach the next in increasing numbers. In this way, the Torah will endure forever. In order for this plan to succeed, however, our children's Torah education must be of the highest standard, free from the influence of those who reject the Torah or seek to compromise its truth. At present, we find ourselves surrounded by many such influences. Nevertheless, we can be confident that all falsehood is destined to vanish, and that not one letter of our Torah will be compromised. Those who follow the ways of the true tzaddikim will preserve the transmission of the Torah so that it endures until the coming of the Mashiach. May he be revealed speedily in our days. Then all humanity will behold the truth. We're seeing a lot of this in practice today, how education and the way that education is taught can have a really, really big impact on our future. Are we educating? Are we indoctrinating? Are we teaching? Are we doing propaganda? Are we teaching to be kind and good? Or are we teaching to be murderous and evil? You see, when you don't let external influences, politics, or even external socio-political beliefs come into the pureness of the Torah, and you teach the Torah in a pure way, then that pureness is always going to prevail. Let's be pure with our Torah. Let's put ourselves aside when we're listening to the Torah, and then let's kind of mesh ourselves with the Torah that we purely listen to. And let's see what that does. And in closing, be deliberate. Rebbe Eliyahu Chaim Rosen, the founder and dean of Breslev Yeshiva in Jerusalem, used to say, take note, wherever you find the word menucha, which is deliberateness, you also find the word simcha, joy. Whenever you find the word yagon, which is haste in Yiddish, you also find the word anacha, sighing. Wow. When you're deliberate, it brings joy. When you're hasty, it brings a sigh. You never sigh of joy. You always sigh, oh yeah. But you're in simcha when you realize that the truth is there and there's no apologies necessary. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen v'amen. Thank you very much for your time, and this concludes the first Mishnah of the first parak, the first chapter of Pirkei Avot.